Sarah Holbrook. I'm the Executive Director of the Pinhead Institute, providing STEM education for kids here in Telluride, Colorado. And I'm the lucky person who gets to interview the mayor of Telluride, Colorado, Sean Murphy.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing really well.
So it's been a little while since we've met. I think there have been maybe 2 council meetings, so we have some
That's
stuff
right.
to catch up on. And then there was a special meeting yesterday and a budget meeting this morning.
There's a lot going on.
So let's talk first about, we always talk about affordable housing here in Telluride, how difficult it is for the workforce to find places to live within the town of Telluride. And there's some new ideas for how to raise some funds to build some more affordable housing. Talk about that.
Sure.
Ballot measures.
We considered 3 separate ballot measures actually in the last 2 meetings. One was for a property tax mill levy of two mills. One was for a short-term excise rental tax, which would have been 2.5% on the value of the rental. And we also considered a sales tax of 0.5 cent for affordable housing. So each of the 3 would have been, or could be, or designed to be dedicated only for affordable housing. The property tax proposal, which we agreed to go ahead and advance to the November 6th ballot for the public to decide.
Tax, and that's
so
a
that's
mill.
a 2 mil proposed increase.
So say you have a house that's worth $500,000 a year. How much does that add to your
It's about
taxes?
$144 a year.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and our revenue
Less than
projection
$1
is
a day.
each mill is equivalent to about $275,000 of revenue. So it's about $550,000 for a 2 mil increase in the property tax.
Okay.
And I think several of us sort of are of the mindset, and I supported that measure myself. We have relatively low property taxes here in the town of Telluride. The thing that cuts against this and that people really are going to have to decide for themselves, which is the whole point, is a number of other organizations like the fire district is going for a mill levy as well, which has been a headline recently.
Sure.
The medical center would like to make full use of its state statutory ability to get up to 6 mills, and I think they've got 3.2 or something at the present time.
And so
my
they might ask
understanding-
for another 2.8 to make
I
it up
think they're
to
going to
6.
ask the public, may we go to that 6? And then there's a mental health initiative that's property tax based as well.
Wow.
That one I think is 3/4 of a mil, much like the early childhood education measure that passed last year, last November. So the behavioral health, mental health support proposal is for 3/4 of a mil of property tax there too. So the point is there are a number of other competing measures.
Right.
So we didn't want to limit ourselves just to asking for a property tax increase. We felt like, just like with SMART, having sort of a shared revenue between a sales tax and a property tax would be a good evergreen funding mechanism. So in our case, we not only considered sales tax again, which we then also approved
for a
half a
a
cent
half a
increase.
cent,
So we
okay.
currently have a 0.5 cent of the 4.5% town sales tax. 1/2 of one of those cents is dedicated for affordable housing. That yields about $750,000 a year for
Okay.
revenue. So we've proposed to basically double that.
So we'll get $1.5 million
if the
in
voters
total.
approve this sales tax ballot measure, we would get $1.5 million from sales tax. If they were to approve the property tax, we would get an additional 500 some odd thousand. So we would have a really solid foundation of about $2 million before you even thought about the affordable housing mitigation fees
Right.
applicable to residential and commercial
And
construction.
that's already been bumped up. That's not a ballot measure.
That's
People
not a
don't
ballot
have to
measure.
vote on that.
That's
The
a fee.
council
So
voted on that.
under Colorado law, TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, we, the local governments, are not allowed to just simply impose a tax, but we, the local governments, do have the authority to impose fees. So the affordable housing mitigation fee on new construction was what we bumped up last January and February.
Yes.
So that amount already has yielded, I saw some numbers recently, in a ordinary year, we used to take in about $200,000 from that. I think we're now right around $400,000 through the first 6 months of 2018.
Sure.
So we could be talking about close to $3 million a year in good times. Obviously, when the economy does trend down, and that will happen, our sales tax receipts will dip, potentially our property tax would stay the same. We wouldn't lower that. But then the affordable housing mitigation fee, if there is no new construction,
Right, then that goes away.
goes down
Yeah,
drastically.
the fee is still there, but nothing's coming in.
Exactly.
Yeah, nothing's
So
being built.
the idea is we have a current funding source of about $1 million, $1.2 million in an average year, and we really feel like we need to save up more money so that we can start doing more significant work.
Right.
We have Carhenge to think about, we have Shandoka to replace, we have maybe Shandoka parking lot to master plan for parking and housing, additional housing. So going from 1.2 to, let's say, close to 3, in an ideal world, if the voters approve both this proposed property tax ballot measure and the proposed sales tax ballot measure, would really give us, really increase our firepower.
Yeah.
So
What's the mechanism of a mill levy? Once it's in place, does it go away ever, or is it in perpetuity until the voters
until
vote
the
it
vote,
off?
it's the latter. So unless you design it to sunset at a date certain, which we did not in this case, it continues in perpetuity.
I remember a few years back, we had a big mill levy to add some rooms into the school, to make a big renovation of the school. Did that have a sunset date?
That was a bond, though,
Oh, that was a
wasn't
bond.
that?
It wasn't
I think
a
that
mill
was the
levy?
$24 million dollar bond that they
Okay.
sought and that the voters approved. That was not a mill levy.
Okay.
The school has its own taxing authority, and obviously we do pay a portion of our property taxes dedicated to the school here. They, to my knowledge, are not going to be seeking an additional increase in that amount.
Right.
But the deadline is today, so
I
I don't
can
know what
find out
other,
more.
it's possible that something slipped in before, to the county clerk, not to us. But we knew we had to take action by effectively Thursday of this week because today, Friday, was the deadline.
Right, to put something on the ballot.
Right.
Okay. Or give your intention to put something on the
No,
ballot.
the intent was necessary to declare by July 30th.
Oh, right, so that was a
And
while
then
back.
delivery of the actual language was to occur no later than September 7th.
Got it, and that's
So,
today.
and that's what we've done.
Now, there was a meeting that wasn't full of town council people. There were a couple people missing that was voting on whether or not to add a tax, I think, to a short-term rental situation where the
Right, that
renters
was
would
our
pay for that tax. And some
August
people said
14th
yes,
meeting.
and it was a bit contentious afterwards. And that was maybe going to be added onto the ballot, and now it is not.
We took that up at our September 4th meeting, and we had rather robust both public participation as well as council participation. And the idea was, and I said this at the meeting, and I'm happy to repeat it, I actually had a change of heart about this tax proposal myself, because when I initially started thinking about this last February, when we all agreed that we needed to think about other tools and other funding sources, I thought, oh, this seems like a no-brainer to me because we can all point to that certain long-term rental that's become a short-term rental. And so the idea was, aha, and that of course has impacted negatively the ability for us to have affordable housing in town.
Yeah,
And
sure.
therefore maybe those short-term rentals should be paying something
bit
more toward this problem. But when you look at the impacts of it, and part of it is a tale of there are always unintended consequences to any good intended,
The
measure.
butterfly effect.
So we considered this at a pretty lengthy process, both on August 14th and again on the 4th of September. And I felt like, not just because there was a certain group advocating against it or a certain group advocating for it, but it really was targeting and raising that revenue stream on the backs of 14% of our economy. And
Sure.
it was basically designed to, depending on what percentage rate, our 2.5% thing would have been $500,000. So the idea was we should maybe wait and watch what's going on in Mount Crested Butte. They just adopted such a tax last
So
November.
we can see what the repercussions are for them
It
before
might
we
be
decide
helpful,
to put
exactly,
that in play here without knowing
because
what
they've
could
taken
happen.
their lodging rates up. Their combined tax rate on lodging is now 18.8% or
And
something.
what's our
And our
combined?
combined tax rate on lodging is 12.65.
So that's significant.
So the idea was, boy, and 12.65 is really pretty much among the higher ones when you look at all the other resort towns in the state of Colorado. So I think we're better off waiting a year and studying what happens with that particular mechanism. The other idea was there was some back-of-the-envelope sort of economic analysis done, and if that tax were to cause each and every rental property to lose one rental per year, that one rental per year translates into something between 25 and 30 employees. And then those employees who would be making otherwise $45,000 to $65,000, that's the sort of the assumed salary or compensation rate, when that money pulses through our economy 2.5 times or whatever the economists would tell you that you spend, and then the grocer goes out and spends your money on something else at the restaurant, and the restaurateur spends it at the liquor store or whatever. We saw numbers that indicated that we could be harming our economy by up to $1 million a year.
Wow.
So the idea of, holy cow, great to get the extra $500,000 of revenue, but whoa, we don't really want to do something that really damages our economy.
Right.
The other segment of the conversation was, A sales tax and a property tax are so much more broadly applied and shared burden across the entire visitor, second homeowner.
Yeah, the
if
people
you're
who live here,
people who
yeah.
live here, so it's not just falling on one subset of the community. And when you look at it as a portion of the overall spend, a half a penny for every dollar you're going to spend is really not an insurmountable, sort of burden.
Right.
So there was discussion actually about, well, sales taxes tend to impact lower income people more harshly. They're so-called regressive measures, and so some of our council folks did not support the idea of a sales tax. 2 of them did not, partly for that reason. But we decided that we would go ahead and put it out there, let the voters decide. If the voters also want us to exempt certain things from that, you wouldn't do that on the ballot measure, of course, but you could tell town council you'd like us to go back and revise our municipal code and stop taxing groceries, for instance, or utilities, or applying that particular tax to those essential goods and services. So it's still a balancing act, but in terms of an equity sort of approach, spreading it through a sales tax, spreading it through a property tax, and as we all can say, there's probably half of our community where the housing is owned by someone from out of town.
Right.
So that's really spreading the burden to the out of town people too.
Yeah.
So, and not falling disproportionately only on the locals.
Right.
So I hope people will educate themselves about this. There'll be information that'll come out closer to the election in the so-called blue book that talks about all the ballot measures that everybody will get in the mail.
Oh, good.
Probably about 3 or 4 weeks before you get your ballot in the mail. And so you'll have an opportunity to, read the pro and con write-ups for each of our measures, as well as all the other all the other tax measures that are proposed. So I know the state has a few measures that will be on the ballot regarding transportation, roads, how do you fund. So stay tuned, but at least at this point, we, the town council, for this cycle, have decided that the most appropriate things to advance to the community are, do you want a property tax increase and do you want a sales tax increase?
Yeah, sure.
Only for earmark for housing.
Now, we're talking about sales tax and property tax, and that reminds me of the sales tax revenues for this year. They are up a little bit.
They're up a little bit,
Yeah.
surprisingly so. We had a little more sluggish winter.
Sure.
But we've had, a pretty solid, robust summer. So through July of 2018, we're actually 2% ahead of where we were
Last
to
year,
that
which
same
was up
period
over the
last
year
year.
before, which was up over the year before. Now
Sales
I
tax
wonder,
is pretty stable, though. Even
Yeah.
when the economy goes down, our sales tax it doesn't crash as much as real estate transfer
right,
tax
and
does.
so the real estate transfer tax is a little bit down. I
it's-
wonder if the bad ski season made people think maybe they don't want to buy a home here. I wonder.
Well,
Yeah.
those people who come here and think that this is only a winter place should come in the summer then and
I
then
know, for real.
buy that home anyway.
Yeah, even with the drought, it's been a beautiful summer.
But
my
to your
goodness.
point, you're right.
Yeah.
The latest numbers indicate that through July, we're down $600,000 based upon where we were last year at that point for real estate transfer tax.
Sure.
So these things are lumpy and sort of come in at
Yeah, and so September, October, November could be robust as it has in years past, and that will
Correct.
make up the deficit.
and
Now,
people buying houses, putting contracts down this summer because they came to Film Fest and they fell in love with their
Yeah,
$3 million
it happens.
house. They're not going to close until October probably.
Right, sure.
So
So
those
we'll
are
see it
we'll
then.
see. We usually finish strong.
And sales tax goes to the
Our general fund.
general fund.
Which funds the basic services that all of our departments, the marshal's department, the park service, the clerk's office, the things that we all, are benefited by every day.
And the real estate transfer tax goes
The real
to.
estate transfer tax goes to the capital fund. So
Right.
funny you should mention that because we spent 4 hours this morning focusing on a portion of the 2019 budget, that portion being our capital improvements fund. And so we took a very conservative approach in terms of forecasted revenue. You might recall, for example, last year for 2017, we had estimated that we would have about $4.8 million of real estate transfer tax revenue.
Throughout the year.
Throughout that year. And in fact, and in reality, we received about $6 million
So
for
we had
2017. So we had 1.2
extra.
in excess.
And does the town council decide where that excess goes?
Yes, we make an end-of-year adjustment
So you
based
could
on
put it
actual
in-
receipts.
you could
We
put
could
it
put
in-
some of that into affordable housing.
Right.
We could put some of that into.
Where did you put the 1.2 from last year?
That's a good question because we did not make a special. Back in 2016, we contributed $250,000 to the Affordable Housing Fund. I think it just stayed in the general fund and became part of our reserves. And we, last year, our capital fund had about a 30% reserve. This year, we just went through the painful exercise of looking at all the department head asks for 2019, all of their capital projects, and saying, okay, yes, we can't go without, for example, there's a $1.5 million forecast expense to repave the spur from rotary to rotary.
Wow.
And if we don't keep putting a top coat on this thing and we let the roads start to crumble and break apart, we're in bigger trouble because then we have to dig it all out.
Right.
So you might
Which
recall
seems like they do it all the time, but clearly they don't.
we sort of do spot maintenance here and there, and you're right, a couple sections seem to have been more seriously improved than others. But we feel like this is an expense that it's been 7 years since we did the last similar type of approach, and the life of what we did was only supposed to be 3 or 4 years. So we've already kind of cheated it, and we really don't want it to deteriorate any more than it already is.
Right.
So that's one of those things where we said, that's priority one.
And how much is that?
$1.5 million
Wow.
of capital expense next year. We had something that unfortunately fell off, was deferred a year at least, and that is improvements to the pavilion, improvements to the hockey rink.
Sure.
We are, apparently, we don't have the most state-of-the-art dressing room accommodations for visiting teams and things like that, and apparently that's not a good thing. So we've been talking, and they've planned an addition to the west and to the north of the existing pavilion, which would provide for better restrooms, additional restrooms, and locker rooms. So that's not going to be a 2019 item. Our Parks and Rec staff is just amazing with their ability to sort of stretch or to do whatever, and they were very, very good about saying, you know what, we realize that that's not your number one priority, and that we realize you forecast a lower revenue. That's the point I didn't make before very effectively, and that was despite the fact that we had a $4.8 million budget last year,
And $6 million in revenue.
And $6 million in revenue.
This
year we expected $4.9 million. And
We're not close to that
probably
right
not
now.
going to get there. So we put our expectations down and decided that for next year we're only going to count on $4.5 million. So we're trying to be more conservative. We basically said, let's just knock 10% off what we received last year, and we'll go with that amount as our
Right.
budgeted revenue
So
forecast.
what are some of the other capital expenses that you've approved for next year?
We were struggling with the fact that we really need, our sewer plant and our water fund needs more monies devoted to it. So we're trying to adopt a 5-year plan right now, the short-term plan for the wastewater treatment plant, which was another big work session item that we discussed on the September 4th meeting. And there we know we have probably a $90 million total liability. And so we need to start doing things to the tune of $800,000 here or $1 million there. And so what we're going to do is potentially, in addition to raising rates for wastewater, your bi-monthly bill for that, we're also pushing more money to immediate needs projects there. So to the tune of a little less than $1 million for next year.
Immediate needs meaning fixing some pipes, changing some things?
It's more of trying to get the right, to get better technology to biodigest a lot of these.
Sure, so it's more effective,
Right,
more
exactly.
efficient without being replaced at this point.
Right, we can't afford to tear it all down and start new. We are going to do this in phases, but these are kind of the short-term needs in order to keep the plant optimized, as well as try to start updating things to be a little bit more 21st
I know it's very
century.
important, but I'm kind of falling asleep a
Okay,
little bit.
all right, we
what
won't
else,
talk about that anymore.
What else is exciting about the town of Telluride?
Gosh,
What are you
well,
looking
let's
forward
see.
to? What's
Well,
unusual?
Blues and Brews is coming up.
Yes,
So
great festival.
That's one of my favorites, not
Yes,
to pick favorites,
yeah.
but
No, I mean, they're all so good.
it's an amazing one, as always. And of course, we've just had Film Festival, which was a special crowd in and of itself.
Yes.
And I didn't see any celebrities, but I know they were staying all over the place because I was hearing people at the hotels talk about so-and-so's here and so-and-so. So I don't know. Did you see any films?
I was at Burning Man during the festival. I
that's
did
right,
the after
okay.
the fest quite devotedly, so I saw a bunch of films after the fest, including a film that was kind of started here about 10 years ago. Our dear friend John Chester had been a filmmaker, although he grew up on a farm, and he came to play one of his films in the documentary festival over Memorial Day weekend years ago when the focus was food, and his wife is already a fantastic chef and very kind of back to basics, bone broth, using butter, lots of local vegetables. And they decided to buy and have someone help them buy and renovate a farm in Simi Valley near Los Angeles. So it was a 10-year project of renovation, of making the soil that was concrete into this beautiful lush soil, planting fruit trees, diversifying the crops. They have livestock, they have chickens and the eggs like sell out in 5 seconds. There's like huge fights at the farmer's market for people who want their eggs. And John, because he's not only a farmer but a filmmaker, made this beautiful film about it called The Biggest Little Farm, and it played in the festival and it played after the festival. So I got to see it and see him, which was great. And it's called Apricot Lane Farms, and they do farm tours about once a quarter. So if you're ever in the Los Angeles area, look online and see if it's time for you to go walk around their farm, because it's spectacular.
I might be going to LA for the National League of Cities meeting in November, so I will,
Yeah,
I will
look
commit
online.
that to memory.
It's remarkable. I mean, the farm is so physically beautiful, and the food that they grow is so healthy for your body and for the world. It's everybody should aim to be somewhat like them, because it's just remarkable what they've been able to pull off. And then, of course, the film is lovely as well. And he
So it's
also
a
makes.
story about sustainability. And,
It's a story
yeah.
about sustainability and a family's commitment to trying to kind of do the right thing and with the land, and it's one thing creates another problem, creates another problem, creates another problem, but they all kind of over time end up being solved without pesticides, without trapping. They had a coyote that was eating their chickens, and then they fixed the chicken fence, and then the coyote started eating the gophers that were harming the fruit trees, so that was much more healthy for the ecosystem. And there was one owl when they took it over. Now there's 18. Anyhow, I'm going on too long. Biggest Little Farm. Keep an eye out for it. Who knows when it's going to come out? I mean, it's just played in the festival, but I think the festival's got such great films. It was really a pleasure to catch the ones that I did.
Yeah, I only saw 2 things during the festival, and one of them was a film called Boy Erased, and the other one was Melissa McCarthy's movie Can You Ever Forgive
I
Me?
did see that one too, with the
So,
forger, the woman who
yes.
is a wannabe writer who wasn't very successful, and then she gets very successful writing memorabilia of famous authors.
Yep.
It's so funny because when she goes in to sell them to the collectors, she's like, "Isn't this such a beautifully written letter?" She needed approval so desperately,
And it was
fun
based
to-
on a true story,
Based on a
right?
true story, yeah, and fun
Yeah.
to see Melissa McCarthy in a peculiar role, but not, she wasn't a big jokester in this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was,
Well, Boy Erased was based on a true story too, but not quite as
I heard
amusing.
about that
yeah.
one. Yeah. So what else do you want to talk about? What's on your agenda coming up? This next month. Are you traveling? Are you going to go to
we're-
any of the ski towns meetings? Or
I just did one of those actually about 10 days ago over
did
in
that-
Crested Butte,
sure.
or Mount
Oh,
Crested Butte.
that's when you
So-
found out about the sales tax, probably, right?
Well, we
Not
had
sales
already
tax,
been alerted to that, the
yeah,
lodging, or
lodging
the
tax.
short-term rental tax that their community embraced.
Right.
And I guess we'll see. I mean, that's, I had never been over there before, actually.
Crested Butte?
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of Telluride in that it's beautiful old Victorian, very centralized housing, but it's got a bigger, wider valley.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more light.
And there's more space between some of their buildings.
Yes.
I mean, it's not
Yes,
filled
it's
in
not as
yet.
dense.
So,
Yeah.
And it's kind of like us in the Mountain Village, where they have Mount Crested Butte, which has the newer sort of
right.
developed as a ski resort.
I hear they're going to try to make a gondola from the town to Mount Crested Butte,
Oh, I
or
didn't
some
know
kind of
that.
public transportation. Maybe it's just a pipe dream, but it sounds like a good
since
one.
Vail Resorts has acquired that resort, I'm sure that they will have some infrastructure improvements as well.
Yeah.
But
Do you hear? Are there infrastructure improvements planned for our mountain for this year? Will there be any changes from last year, except for let's hope more snow?
my understanding is, the ski resort did release, I think, their 5-year forecast of activities. And I know that they're struggling with, they lost over $1 million last winter
Yeah.
for being good stewards and taking good care of their employees.
Yeah.
And my understanding is, the most immediate plan had been they were going to take Lift 4 and put it where Lift 9 is.
Right.
And then I think Lift 9 was going to move down somewhere else. But anyhow, they would have a new 6-person high-speed quad where 4 is.
Oh, sure.
I'm not sure
They
if
might be
that
delaying that a
capital
little bit.
is going to be spent this year or not. I think there were a couple of other external factors that sort of put them behind. So I don't think we're going to see anything new for the 2018-19 ski season, although I'm not a spokesman for the ski resort, so I can't be.
That's
don't
not your
rely
job.
on me.
No, you're the mayor of the town of Telluride, and we have.
But I will
that
say,
perfectly clear.
in our housing conversations, Bill Jensen, the CEO of the ski resort, did come to our meetings, each of the work sessions and the action item taken on the ballot measures, and basically reminded us that the ski resort has really been doing a great job of trying to get, they've spent, I guess, $7 million already on the Ilium project that they're going to be developing out.
Housing
And then,
wise.
yes, housing wise. And that was just last year, between the Ilium project and between the Telluride apartments up in the Mountain Village, I think their spend on affordable housing last year alone was $7 million.
Yeah.
And in the next few years, they're planning on spending like another $8 million.
Yeah.
And of course, the school is, I think they're finished pretty much with the 6 units that they have developed in Ilium.
Right.
So I'm not sure who the lucky people are that get to live in
No,
those.
we'll have to report on that
But,
next time.
they sure
Yeah.
looked cool from the
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's nice to see all these other different participants and stakeholders actually taking responsibility for doing their part for the housing issue too.
Right.
Because
we're
we
all in it together.
Yeah, this is a shared concern
Yes.
and a shared burden. And
Yes.
it's nice to see that you're seeing people actually accept that and put their money where their mouth is too.
Yeah.
So,
I had a question, speaking of new
Yes.
building and sites and places. The Med Center. Let's talk about the Med Center. What's going on?
well, there will be a San Miguel County Commission work session on Wednesday, September 13th. I think it is scheduled for right after lunch to talk about a proposed plan where the Med Center could be located out at Society Turn. So there's an entity related to the San Miguel Valley Corporation that holds that land. It's approximately 20 acres. It's where our wastewater treatment plant is.
Okay.
It's sort of all around our plant. And so all of that acreage amounts to about 20 acres. There is a proposal to put the medical center right there, which would be great in terms of proximity to the user groups, because the town user group is about 35% of that population. The Mountain Village is another 25% of the user group, and the rest of Down Valley is 40%.
Oh,
So
sure.
locating it there at Society Turn actually makes sense. It's fairly a logical thing. It's a multi-part equation where I think the Med Center and the hospital, the Med Center and the owner of that parcel have been in talks for years about what could we make work. And part of the solution is, well, what about water and sewer, because it's outside of the town limits, and so they kind of need the town's cooperation in terms of, up or down, in terms of support for that, and would we supply water and sewer to such a development. And so I think you'll see that the town wants to be cooperative. We certainly want to keep talking about this topic. No decisions are made. We did a work session on this today, actually, or an executive session. And
who's at the table in the executive session for
it's
this?
just town council and our town attorney, because he was giving us legal advice about the possibility of negotiating some sort of an agreement with these parties.
Right.
And
And the
so
parties would be the Med Center
the
and
Med Center
the
and
county?
the owner of the parcel.
And
the county would then, because they're going for a PUD, a planned unit development with the county, and that's what the county work session will be on September 13th, Wednesday, September 13th, I think right after lunch, in the county meeting room there at 333 West Main Street. They'll be kind of doing a public presentation of the proposed plan. I don't know what they'll show us. They didn't give us a fine granular level detail of anything in our executive session today. But the message and the takeaway is we all need to help, and this is a shared concern, and it needs to be a shared burden as well. And so the town coming to the table with water and sewer, and not being so picky about you have to be annexed, because that is a deal breaker that could upset the apple cart. And we don't, the Med Center has been looking for the right home for years.
Right.
And honestly, we need to be part of a
solution.
hopeful solution.
Right.
And we will be. I
And
think
the town of
that
Telluride is
the message to telegraph out of today's executive session is the town is going to be there to be supportive. And so this is a good thing.
yeah. You were saying annexing the land. We talked a couple of months ago about the cemetery. Is there news on that? It's owned by what, 3 different entities?
Yes,
It's the town of Telluride, it's the county, and it's
There's actually, so the county doesn't own anything in
Right.
there. It's the
It's just that
cemetery
it's-
district that owns a portion of the cemetery. Then the town of Telluride owns 3 sort of large lots that make up most of the old cemetery where the oldest graves are. The Odd Fellows, which was a benevolent society like the Elks, but they're no longer functioning actively in Telluride, they own a portion on the north side, and the Elks Club own a lot. And so you do have 4 owners. Those are your 4 owners. And the town of Telluride, we were approached by the Cemetery District Board of Directors earlier this year, I think in the spring, and they said, hey, their insurer has alerted them to the fact that, guess what, with all these different owners within the cemetery, if there is a mishap and someone falls and, cracks a skull or has to have some other sort of injury, sustains some other injury, and it happens on the Elks parcel, for example, the cemetery district is not going to insure that, so they
Right.
are not responsible for that. And the same goes for the town of Telluride. The 3 large parcels that we have within the oldest part of the cemetery, if someone were to have a personal injury in that area, we would be responsible. So what we decided was, obviously, the lots we own within the cemetery have long ago been filled up with remains, and so we are going to convey those 3 lots to the cemetery district. My understanding is the Oddfellows have decided to do the same. The Elks, I don't believe they've chosen to do that, so there's going to be sort of a different, they'll need an easement between the Elks as the owner of that parcel and the cemetery district in order to do maintenance for the district to maintain that.
Sure.
But there's still an underlying liability risk for the Elks for their parcel if they don't convey that.
Right.
So understandably, they have reasons they don't want to do that, and that's fine. But as the town, we are trying to help clean this up. I mean, one of these deeds to the town was back from 1895, one was from 1912 or 13, and then there was one from the 60s, I think.
Right.
So it's time to consolidate. And
So when is this going to happen? We've been talking about it for a
we
while.
approved we approved a resolution to direct our attorney to go ahead and prepare those deeds. So yeah, I would say that probably in the next 30 days, the town will convey its interests within the cemetery. There's one little issue that's come up, which we thought was not an issue anymore, but apparently it is. The cemetery in the 1950s, when they put the existing fencing up, they encroached in the northwest corner of the cemetery on some town-owned land that's north of the cemetery on the hillside, pretty steep there. And unfortunately, they've buried 2 bodies, is my understanding, on town land. And we certainly don't want to disrupt that.
Right.
So we assumed, unfortunately, incorrectly, that we didn't have any bodies on our land, so the cemetery district had agreed to adjust the fence line and stay on their property. But when they went and walked it with the surveyor
They were
and
like,
the fence
"Whoops,
builder,
there
they
it
said,
is."
uh-oh, these 2 are
Yeah.
outside of that line. So
So
they
it'll
will
be
come back to
redrawn.
the town, and we'll in all likelihood adopt a license agreement that allows them to keep the fence where it is, and effectively we'll never make use of that because
Yeah.
it wouldn't be appropriate.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are, we're going to have to visit that at the the September 25th meeting, which will be our next meeting of town council. So that's something coming up, more in the way of housekeeping. But at least at this point, the majority, it's unanimous. The town council would like to help the cemetery district, would like to get all that stuff consolidated under their umbrella and their
Right.
tent, and
And walk away slowly.
we will just, yes, be good neighbors.
Yes, exactly.
But
Hopefully
there
not
is
too
there is an
hastily.
intergovernmental
Yep.
agreement that's also going to be negotiated. I think the draft is already in existence, and that'll be considered at the September 25th meeting as well. There's been some confusion, let's put it this way, when there is an incident in the cemetery and a person calls 911, then they're asked for the
responds?
location.
Yeah.
Is it the county or the town portion? Because 1/3 of the cemetery is in the town limits, and the other 2/3, and strangely enough, where the town own the other 3 parcels, are in the county, not in the town. So sometimes the law enforcement folks go, well, you need to be calling the sheriff, or you need to be calling the marshal. So we want to avoid a circumstance like that. So what we're going to do, and the agreement that I think the county attorney and the town of Telluride attorney have reached, is the town will have concurrent jurisdiction over the county portion of the cemetery, so
okay.
that we can respond
Right,
to
so whenever
any
you get a phone
incidents.
call from
So
any part
you need
of
to call
it,
the town
yeah,
when you
but-
need help in the cemetery as the takeaway.
Right.
And we just needed the approval of the county and the sheriff to say, yes, you all may police
Yes.
what's not in your town. And so we will have that one and done on September 25th. Town council meeting as well.
Right.
So we're getting there. This has only been maybe a 6-month
Yeah.
process.
I do remember we
But-
talked about it before. Yeah.
No.
Now there's some building going on just below the huge tree with the swing in it in the east north end of town. It's further on past.
Is that the Windhorse
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have a big fence now, and they're starting
like
to
they're
excavate.
making a
yeah, they're
road.
extending the
Yeah.
road. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's happening.
That's happening too, and so I guess from a real estate transfer tax point of view, since it's an approved project and everything has been, their entitlements are completely done, we would love for them to subdivide, they have subdivided. We'd love for those lots to be sold and us to collect some real estate transfer tax on them. But yes, that has been obviously a very visible
Yeah.
point of disagreement among certain people in the community, and it's a
And it's
thing now.
happening. Yeah.
So
How many houses are going to be there?
I think that there were approximately
17,
16
16,
home
17,
sites.
yeah.
And 2 of those home sites are actually, they have an unusual, but maybe this is a novel approach that other projects will adopt. They're locals lots, quote unquote, so that means that whoever purchases them is required to live in them, live on that lot, live in the home that's built on that lot all year long.
I did not know that's
Yeah.
a thing.
The P&Z and their creative wisdom, they agreed with the developer that not to, quote unquote, deed restrict the lot to our specifications, like if you're an owner, you have to work in the community for 1,400 hours, or if you're a renter, you have to work in the community for 1,000 hours. They came up with a hybrid or some sort of a unique model of saying, all right, well, the owner needs to be physically present here and needs to be working here.
Wow.
So that could be maybe another tool that other developers ultimately
Is that an
consider.
opt-in kind of a thing?
Yeah, it was more of a, in order for their planned unit development to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, they had to offer some kind of a public benefit. And so usually, and now they were offering a large amount of open space. That was the obvious public benefit. But apparently they added these sweeteners, this little sweetener of these 2 of the 16 lots, I think, are required to be full year-round local housing.
2 of the 16,
2 of the
not all of
16,
the 16,
correct.
2 of the 16.
Yep,
Still,
that's
pretty
right.
great.
So,
Interesting, yeah.
and that's another model where, you know, we don't have a lot of examples except sitting out there at Pilot Knob, what do we call that? Sunset Ridge.
Okay,
Where
yeah.
there aren't a lot of examples here where you could buy a piece of property and build yourself a deed-restricted home yourself. And so hopefully both at that higher price point up there, as well as maybe the little bit higher price point out at
Sunset Ridge. is
Sunset
that-
Ridge,
yeah.
sorry. We might get some of the gap filled then, where people make too much money under the
Yeah,
other
deeds,
regime,
yeah.
but
But they are
but they are
working and-
qualified and they could build their own property. So, yeah, we'll see
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah.
But that's what's going on there. Let's see what else. We're making progress with our parking structure. So
right.
next to Baked and Telluride, we have to have a big shout out to Jerry Green and thank him for his patience and,
Yeah.
and,
And
the,
the
and the market and the pet store.
Right.
And
try
so
to
I know
give
it's
them
been
my business if I can.
rather difficult, and I hope we all will do that. We
Yeah.
should.
It looks so different every week, you know, if you don't go see it every day, then all of a sudden you come back and you're like, wow, that's
Yeah,
got
wow, there's
concrete in
concrete
it.
there
Yeah,
now.
it really,
Exactly, it's not
a
just
big
dirt.
hole in the ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
encouraging, and hopefully we're sorry for the inconvenience, and we certainly want everybody to keep patronizing the immediately adjacent businesses.
Yes, give them
and
your business.
we'll be
Also,
through this in 16 more months.
I think next week is Barrett. I'm not sure if you've seen that with the Telluride Theater. They do a kind of a public awareness campaign about bears and bear
Okay.
awareness, but it's Telluride Theater. And it's hysterically funny. It's 21 and older at the Liberty, I think, Monday and Tuesday night. And it's just the funniest stuff about, you know, how to avoid antagonizing bears or, you know, attracting them to your
Well,
garbage.
next week is Bear Awareness Week
Yes,
from
yes.
the 7th to the 14th of September.
Yes, exactly.
We proclaimed
So-
that this
Yeah.
this week at Town Council.
So good. Well, it was about last year this time that a bear ate one of my chickens. So they are out and
Oh.
about. Yeah.
Oh.
And-
Those
pets.
those domestic pets
yes,
that,
exactly. Those
with
domestic
wings.
pets. Yes, exactly. Within the town limits. There's one less now.
La la la. la. Okay.
Apparently, you know, in the fall, bears need to eat 25,000 calories a day or something. It's like Michael Phelps when he's competing as a swimmer.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't also acknowledge September as a suicide prevention month as well.
yes.
We did have a presentation about that a few days ago at Town Council. Paul Reich, who's been sort of the person spearheading awareness campaigns here over the past several years
Sure.
about suicide, came and gave us sort of a thumbnail sketch of really what Tri-County Health and other mental health support agencies are trying to do. And they really, there's a lot more we need to help and do in that
Yeah.
area too.
Definitely, especially since we live in a ski town and the numbers are not good for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone actually said, I don't know, this was not Mr. Reich, but someone said to me, on a per capita basis, San Miguel County has one of the highest suicide rates in the country.
Oh my goodness.
Because we only have like 8,500 people who live in the whole county.
Right,
And if you can
exactly.
point to like 12 suicides
Yeah, that's a
in
lot.
the last 6
Yeah.
years or something, it's
Sure.
just staggering.
Yeah, everybody's touched by
So-
it somehow. So yeah, we should find out more about it, learn.
You're right, but
Learn
it's
how to
not
help.
unique to us. Ski
Right.
towns, many ski towns struggle with
Oh,
the same issue.
yeah.
But the solution is we need better mental health support.
Yes.
So I guess, dovetails back into the ballot measures. So
Yeah.
please consider that.
Right,
when
because
you-
that will be on the ballot measure
That
as
will be
well,
on the
right?
ballot. The county commissioners approved that.
And is there going to be buildings starting at Lot B? Is that what we talked about that last time?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
there should be. It was scheduled to start the last week of July.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're just a little bit behind, but yes, there will be.
So don't park your car there and walk away for a week, right? Because who knows?
Well, we've kind of coned off the area that you should stay out of.
Okay.
We did it once thinking, oh, we're about ready to start.
Yeah,
And then
and then
we
it
had a
didn't
delay, so
happen.
we said, okay, take the cones off. Let people park there.
Yeah.
And then, but we'll give people plenty of notice and warning when we're about to start to move dirt. But
Oh, neat.
while we're doing the construction project as well, you will be able to park in the remaining 2/3 of that
Right, I
parking
can
lot.
see that one of the lanes is still open for getting in and out of the parking lot. even
And
though
a
the
number
other
of the
one's
Entrada residents park a vehicle there too. So
Mm-hmm.
they, other than being immediately adjacent to construction activity, you won't be shut out of parking.
Right.
So, except for the spaces we're going to effectively remove for a building, or for
Yay.
a couple of buildings.
Yeah.
That's going to be a great project.
Is that affordable housing rental or for sale, or do we not know which
It
yet?
hasn't been finally
Mm-hmm.
determined. My thought is that it will most likely be for sale,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll have a mixture of some higher end eligible sort of couples with dual incomes and things like that find themselves making too much money from a lot of our other affordable housing deed restricted product here. We're trying to bump up the ceiling a little to start help absorb some of that gap too. So those will be great. The
Yeah.
3 and 4 bedrooms, yeah.
Yeah.
Great size units. What else can I tell you?
Yeah, what else?
Questions from the community?
Yeah,
Is there
you know
anybody?
what? I actually didn't make my rounds today like I
okay.
normally do to get the questions from the community. So I guess I just have you bought your ticket to Original Thinkers October 4th through 7th yet?
I have not,
Ah.
because I might be going out of town there's a group of guys who are turning 50, including myself, and they're going to Munich, the other guys are.
Right.
And so they're trying to get me to go, and that would be October 3rd. So I've been sort of surfing for
right.
good deal airfare. If I can't find a good deal, I'm not going.
Then you
So-
buy your pass to Original Thinkers.
Just abandon this idea of going to Oktoberfest in Munich. No,
Yeah, well, that would be pretty fun too.
that's okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm happy whatever happens.
Yeah,
But yes,
it's
the
all
Original
good.
Thinkers thing is great because we've been looking for other other events to help fill up shoulder seasons, and
Yes.
that is a perfect time of year for us because it's still gorgeous here. It's an amazing
It
time
is
to
so
be here,
beautiful.
and wow,
Yeah.
will that be the weekend that they choose or the time frame that they generally go with, early
I
October?
think that is because there's nothing else happening that weekend, October 4th through 7th. The next weekend is the horror show.
That's right.
And the gondola is still open.
Yep.
There's still plenty of lodging available. People haven't shut down their hotels or anything like that yet. The aspens are gorgeous and gold at that time of year. Weather tends to be good.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good time to have a festival.
Well, speaking of the gondola shutting down, we actually considered, but then it was decided to defer this for 1 year. But there has been talk about keeping the gondola open an extra 12 days or so, so that it runs through October 31st.
Oh, that would be
and
nice.
so my thinking is it's not completely agreed to yet, but there's definitely been positive, constructive engagement on the part of the Town of Mountain Village, the Town of Telluride, and the Town of Mountain Village Owners Association about sharing the cost to do an extra 2 weeks effectively.
Wow.
And that could help then make that first weekend of October even more full because
Yeah.
people know
That they have the whole
that
month.
they've got the whole month to
Yeah.
be here in Telluride.
Yeah, that's
So,
great.
well, that'll be great. It'll be nice to. Is there a theme to the Original Thinkers?
Original Thinkers. That's the
Just-
theme. It's
I
amazing.
thought that's the
people.
name of the
That's
festival,
the name of it.
or
It's
the-
also the theme. A little
Okay.
backstory. My husband David Holbrook, who's created Original Thinkers, he and I did a series of short films years ago called Original Thinkers, where it profiled somebody, a short film documentary format for about 15 minutes. And we enjoyed doing those so much that we actually bought the domain name originalthinkers.com way back then, knowing that we wanted
How
to do more with it.
foresighted of you. Yeah.
So it's just ideas and really interesting speakers. There's some science, there's some philosophy, there's some celebrity, but it's going to be great.
Great.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Sarah, it's always a pleasure to
I
talk to you, and
know,
I'm looking forward
yeah.
to catching you up on the events then after our September 25th meeting.
Yes.
We'll have a little bit more to talk about at the end of the month.
Good. Looking forward
All
to
right.
it. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.